She once stood on the Oscar stage, trembling with joy, holding Hollywood in the palm of her hand. The world saw a goddess, Bond girl, sex symbol, and the face that stopped time. But today, Kim Basinger barely leaves her house. No red carpets, no flashing cameras, months spent hidden behind locked doors, gripped by a fear she can't escape. How does a woman go from ruling the silver screen to disappearing from it entirely? This isn't just the rise and fall of a movie star, it's the survival story of a woman devoured by the same spotlight that made her, and the truth behind her vanishing is stranger and darker than any role she ever played. She once stood on the Oscar stage, trembling with joy, holding Hollywood in the palm of her hand. The world saw a goddess, Bond girl, sex symbol, and the face that stopped time. But today, Kim Basinger barely leaves her house. No red carpets, no flashing cameras, months spent hidden behind locked doors, gripped by a fear she can't escape. How does a woman go from ruling the silver screen to disappearing from it entirely? This isn't just the rise and fall of a movie star, it's the survival story of a woman devoured by the same spotlight that made her. And the truth behind her vanishing is stranger and darker than any role she ever played. Early life. Camilla Ann Basinger was born December 8, 1953, in Athens, Georgia, the third of five children. Her childhood was a study in contrasts. Her father, a former jazz musician turned loan manager, carried quiet discipline. Her mother, once a model, dancer, and competitive swimmer in dazzling aquatic musicals, radiated artistry and charm. Kim grew up surrounded by music, humor, and performance, yet inside she was painfully shy. Ordering food at a restaurant terrified her. Speaking in class made her dizzy. Once she fainted from the simple pressure of standing before her peers. Her parents enrolled her in dance classes, hoping the stage lights would burn away her fear. But even in a family of performers, Kim retreated into herself until 1971. That year, she entered the Athens Junior Miss pageant. For the first time, she stood before hundreds of strangers and didn't collapse. She sang, smiled, stayed on her feet. I didn't care about winning, she later said. I just cared about not fainting. There was another, quieter reason she dreamed of acting. It wasn't for the fame or the glamour, it was for her father. In the dark of a movie theater, she had seen his face light up with pure belief while watching an actor on screen. She wanted to be that spark for him, the person who could put that look in his eyes. It was a dream that would carry her far beyond Athens and into the bright, dangerous orbit of Hollywood. Kim's path began not on a film set, but in front of a camera lens. She signed with the prestigious Ford Modeling Agency, quickly becoming a fixture in national ad campaigns and major magazines. Her cinematic face and arresting presence even landed her on the cover of a rock album by the band Survivor. But behind the perfect photos, Kim felt suffocated. It was hard going from one contract to another, constantly being judged on my appearance, she admitted. Modeling didn't scare her, it left her feeling empty. Every shoot was a silent measurement of her worth, based only on how she looked. So she walked away. She traded the flashbulbs for the grit of acting classes at the William Esper studio, where poses meant nothing and raw emotion meant everything. She auditioned for television, taking nameless bit parts, determined to start from the bottom. Years of persistence led to a bold move in 1981. She posed for Playboy, not for shock value, but as a declaration. At the time, models were often dismissed as ornamental. That spread was her way of saying, I belong in cinema. And it worked. 2 years later, she stepped into the world of James Bond. In Never Say Never Again, 1983, opposite Sean Connery, Kim played Domino Patachi. The film grossed over $160 million worldwide and crowned her as Hollywood's newest sex symbol, but she refused to settle into safe roles. In The Natural, 1984, alongside Robert Redford, she brought complexity and emotional sharpness to her character, earning a Golden Globe nomination. Then came 9.5 Weeks, 1986, a psychological erotic drama that shocked America and was banned in several countries, yet became a cult classic in Europe. The role cemented her image as a daring on-screen presence, but also typecast her, limiting her options for years. In 1989, Tim Burton's Batman made her a global household name as journalist Vicky Vale. The movie was a pop culture phenomenon, grossing over $400 million. But her true artistic peak arrived in 1997 with L.A. Confidential, where she played Lynn Bracken, a role that earned her an Academy Award, a Golden Globe, and a SAG Award. From underestimated model to Oscar-winning actress, Kim had conquered Hollywood, but off-screen, her personal life was about to pull her into storms far more dangerous than anything she faced on set. Before the fame, Kim's romantic life was a quiet string of short-lived relationships with model Tim Saunders, photographer Dale Robinette, and football legend Joe Namath. She was easily moved, but just as easily retreated, guarding her inner world. In 1980, while filming Hard Country, she met makeup artist Ron Snyder, the man who would become her first husband. That same year, Kim suffered a crippling panic attack in a grocery store. She was diagnosed with agoraphobia and remained housebound for 6 months. Ron quit his job to care for her, even changing his last name to Britton at her request so she could keep the same initials for her career. But by the mid-'80s, fractures appeared. According to Ron's memoir, he discovered Kim was romantically involved with her No Mercy co-star Richard Gere. He claimed to have followed her to a restaurant and witnessed them kiss. Though they stayed together a while longer, the marriage ended in 1989. Kim agreed to pay $9,000 a month in spousal support for 8 years. She never publicly confirmed or denied the affair. She simply called it a part of my life, not the most pleasant part. After that, she moved through intense, fleeting romances. Batman producer John Peters, music icon Prince, designer Alexio Gandara, trainer Phil Walsh. But in 1990, she met Alec Baldwin on the set of The Marrying Man. He was charismatic, unpredictable, and seemed strong enough to protect her fragile inner world. They married in 1993 without a prenup and welcomed their daughter Ireland 2 years later. The fairy tale soon soured. Kim's lifelong anxiety clashed with Alec's explosive temper. By 2001, she filed for divorce, unleashing one of Hollywood's most bitter custody battles. Over 7 years, they spent nearly $3 million in legal fees. Alec had to attend anger management and was limited to 90 minutes of daily phone contact with Ireland. Kim had to send weekly updates on her daughter's activities. The feud spilled into the public in 2007 when a voicemail Alec left for 11-year-old Ireland leaked, calling her a rude, thoughtless little pig. The recording shocked the nation. Alec apologized publicly, and Ireland, now older, would later brush it off with humor, but for Kim, the damage was deep. She retreated from the world, spending months behind closed doors, paralyzed by fear and exhaustion. Her bond with Ireland, however, never wavered. She's the only one who never let go, her daughter once said, and that connection would become Kim's anchor through the darkest storms. In 1991, Kim's career was soaring. Batman was still fresh in the public's mind, and the lingering mystique of 9.5 weeks kept her image electric. Then came a script that would change everything. It was called Boxing Helena, a surreal, disturbing psychological drama about a surgeon who kidnaps a beautiful woman and amputates her limbs in the name of love. Directed by Jennifer Lynch, daughter of David Lynch, it was billed as bold, art house cinema for the 1990s. Kim initially said yes. She met the director, read an early draft, and her name secured funding for the project. But when she saw the final script, she recoiled. It was darker, more explicit, and far from the sophisticated image she was building. She pulled out, never imagining the storm she had triggered. Mainline Pictures sued, claiming her withdrawal collapsed the production and cost hundreds of jobs. Studio president Carl Mazzacone went public. A star can't just be beautiful, they have to be accountable for their word. The legal battle became a Hollywood spectacle. The court ruled that her verbal commitment counted, and in 1993, a jury found her guilty of bad faith, ordering her to pay $8.9 million in damages. It was unprecedented. No actress of her stature had ever been hit with such a verdict. Her lawyer argued, the jury didn't like a star. She was too famous, too beautiful, too successful. But the damage was done. That year, Kim filed for bankruptcy. She sold her home, liquidated investments, and withdrew from major projects. Directors who once fought to cast her now kept their distance. By 1995, she reached a private settlement and paid far less than the original sum, but her A-list status was gone. In Hollywood's eyes, she was a risk, a star who could bring down a production with one decision. Kim responded the only way she knew how, quietly. She pivoted to indie films, avoided the tabloid circus, and tried to rebuild. But another wound, buried deeper, still shaped her choices. the trauma she carried from her most infamous role. 9.5 weeks made Kim Basinger a global icon, but behind the sensual imagery was an experience she would later call the most frightening thing I've ever been through in my life. In a New York Times interview, she admitted, "When that movie ended, I didn't want to see a single person I'd worked with again. If I saw the guy who brought the coffee, I'd kill him." It sounded like a dark joke, but it was rooted in raw truth. Director Adrian Lyne and co-star Mickey Rourke deliberately kept her in a state of tension to capture what they considered authentic emotion. She was forbidden to speak to Rourke off camera, ensuring their on-screen dynamic stayed unsettled. Lyne described her as an instinctual actress, someone who doesn't act but reacts, and he used that vulnerability to push her further. Sometimes that meant whispered instructions for Rourke to physically restrain her until she cried, even slap her. Kim initially turned the role down after a humiliating audition where she had to play a prostitute begging for money in a sexual power game. But after receiving 24 roses from Lyne and Rourke, she relented. The cost was high. During a rain-soaked staircase scene in Manhattan, she fell, leaving a scar on her arm that she still carries. The emotional wounds cut even deeper. "I didn't know who I was anymore," she recalled. The strain bled into her marriage, which would end just 3 years later. Adding insult to injury, Lyne publicly downplayed her craft, saying she wasn't intellectual, didn't read books, and simply reacted rather than acted. Kim never fought back in the press. She stayed silent, not because she forgot, but because she couldn't bear to relive it. It wasn't until 26 years later that she saw Rourke again on the set of Black November. By then, the fear had faded, but the memory hadn't. The experience taught her something Hollywood rarely admits. The line between acting and emotional exploitation can be razor thin, and for women, crossing it can leave scars that never fade. In the early 2000s, Kim returned to the screen, not as the glossy sex symbol of the 80s, but as a seasoned actress carrying the weight of lived experience. In 8 Mile, 2002, she stripped away glamour to play an unstable, impoverished mother. In The Door on the Floor, 2004, she delivered a quiet, devastating portrayal of grief. Even in thrillers like Cellular, she brought an edge that made every frame count. Her roles became fewer, but sharper. She wasn't chasing blockbuster fame anymore. She was seeking meaning. Still, by 2010, Kim Basinger's name began to fade from marquees. She took smaller roles like Elena Lincoln in 50 Shades Darker, 2017, more out of curiosity than ambition. Then came a decisive shift. Kim withdrew from Hollywood almost entirely. No more red carpets, no more magazine spreads. Instead, she focused on voice work, writing children's stories, and living far from the glare that had once consumed her. It wasn't a fall from grace, it was a deliberate retreat, a choice made by someone who had been devoured by the machine and wanted no part of it anymore. Legacy Kim Basinger is one of those rare stars whose story is as much about survival as it is about success. Yes, she was a flawless face with eyes that seemed to hide a secret, but behind the beauty was a woman who stood in court for the right to say no, who endured public humiliation in one of Hollywood's nastiest custody battles, and who walked away from fame at the height of her powers. She never chased trends or engineered comebacks. She simply left, quietly, without fanfare, yet left behind a space no one else could fill. Her legacy isn't ambition, it's resilience. It's the courage to choose dignity over constant visibility. And that's why, even in her absence, Hollywood can't forget her. Today, Kim Basinger lives almost entirely outside the Hollywood spotlight. Since 2014, she's shared her life with celebrity hairstylist Mitch Stone. They rarely make public appearances, and when they do, it's quiet, hand in hand, no staged glamour. Love for her no longer needs to be declared, it's lived. Most of her time is spent in Hawaii, surrounded by soft sunsets and ocean air, a place where the constant hum of Hollywood can't reach her. But she hasn't disappeared completely. In 2022, she made a rare creative return in Lit Project 2, Flux, an experimental short film released as an NFT, directed by Peter Bogdanovich. It felt like her punctuation mark, independent, unexpected, and entirely on her terms. The following year, she reemerged for something far more personal, celebrating the upcoming birth of her first grandchild. At daughter Island Baldwin's baby shower, Kim was photographed smiling warmly hand in hand with Mitch. She even shared the sonogram from her own pregnancy decades earlier, closing a maternal circle that began long before fame. beyond the screen. Kim has remained steadfast in her advocacy for animals. A lifelong vegetarian, she's worked with PETA, Farm Sanctuary, and Last Chance for Animals. She's fought to pass U.S. legislation protecting farm animals and has campaigned globally against the dog meat trade. When Jakarta banned dog meat in 2023, Kim publicly thanked the city and urged others to follow. Dogs are not food, they are loyal companions who serve humanity. They must be protected from unimaginable cruelty. Her estimated net worth today, around $20 million, is modest by Hollywood standards, but it's enough for a life built on peace, compassion, and freedom from the noise. Kim Basinger doesn't need a comeback to be remembered. Her journey from crippling shyness to Oscar glory, from public humiliation to quiet independence, has already told the world who she is. A woman unafraid to walk away when staying would cost her soul. No perfection, just truth. And maybe that's why, scars and all, she still mirrors something in all of us.